giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Yep, here's Donald Trump's idea of tax reform, cutting the corporate tax from 35 to 15%. And you and I pay a lot more. Hey, what do you say, everybody? It is a Tuesday, April 25. Hello. Great to see you today. And thank you for being part of the Bill Press Show as we boom out to you live from our studio on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, where the House and the Senate are back in town today. You know what that means. Trouble right here in River City. Yeah. On several fronts, trouble on tax reform. Yes, trouble on health care. Maybe. Trouble on whether or not the government's going to stay open beyond the end of the week, or we'll see a government shutdown, and trouble over the damn wall, which Donald Trump insists now that we have to pay for because Mexico ain't going to do it, and we knew that a long time ago. Lots and lots to talk about today, as always. We'll tell you what's going on. Got some great guests for you today, and we look forward to hearing from you. Most importantly, give us your comments on the news of the day. Lots you're going to want to talk about. You know how to do it? On Twitter, at BP Show. Donald J. Trump does not have an exclusive monopoly on Twitter. You're welcome.
Donald J. Trump!
There he is. Yes. Send us your comments on Twitter, at BP Show. We'll get right to it. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of the stories making news. How about this? This is crazy. A unique copy of the U.S. Declaration of Independence has been discovered.
Yes.
Not here in America, here in Washington, D.C. at the National Archives, where we have a copy of the Declaration of Independence. In England. Handwritten. Two Harvard researchers found it in England, locked away in a local records office in southeastern England, completely ignored by historians, completely ignored by record keepers. They just sort of found it. These two researchers, Harvard researcher Emily Sneff and Danielle Allen, two Harvard professors,
right.
saw the document and they were stunned. Quoting Allen, she said, "I thought, holy history, Batman. We'd seen a lot of copies, but nothing like this." So they have a copy of the actual.
Remarkable.
It's amazing. Here we are.
You see these stories all the time. People open a box in an attic, but even what gets me is so many of these discoveries come in libraries or records, buildings where official records are, and they're just like on the shelf, right?
Yeah,
somebody
just hanging
put them
out
there and then died or forgot about it, and nobody knew about it. And
I guess organizing and file keeping and all of that wasn't so great back in the day, and things just kind of get lost.
It's a good idea, but you have a list of what's
You
there.
need to know what's where. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to lose it for years. A new study shows, this is from Australian scientists, they say that if you're over the age of 50 and you want to boost your brain power, all you got to do is just get a little exercise. Walking, running, yoga, and Tai Chi have all shown to significantly boost brain power.
My understanding was that all you had to do was watch the Bill Press Show.
That will also, will definitely get your heart rate going.
And brain power going.
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of energy. I got a lot of brain power. Or you can just download the podcast, take it with you on your walk or on your run.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, right? Just get it on iTunes. They said, so they said that it's so good, in fact, that they are telling some doctors that you could recommend exercise to improve cognitive function rather than, other medicine.
Well, this is good. There's one more reason to go to the gym.
Yeah. Run, walk,
or
yoga,
just
do
go
whatever you got to do.
Whatever.
Yeah, just do whatever you got to do. By the way, one more quick story. We do have a Secretary of Agriculture yesterday. Sonny Perdue was confirmed by the Senate 87-11, so we got a couple Democrats voting for him as well.
His cousin presided over the hearing.
That's cool. David
Pretty cool.
Perdue, yeah.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hey, what do you say, friends, on a Tuesday, April 25? Good to see you. Welcome to the program. It is the Bill Press Show. We're going to bring you up to date on all the news of the day from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., both here and around the country and around the world, and give you a chance to sound off about it on Twitter at BP Show. All part of the Young Turks Network. We are coming at you in several different forms and formats and venues on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. On Free Speech TV, hello, on Direct TV. You got a satellite dish, good to see you. And in Radio Land out in Chicago, in the greater Chicago area where Barack Obama bounced back into the public eye yesterday. Good to join you on WCPT. Thanks for being part of the program with lots to talk about. Big stories of the day. Yes, Donald Trump. His approval ratings down to 42%, the lowest of any president in modern times. 53% disapprove of the job he is doing as president, which just shows that the more people see, the longer people put up with Donald Trump, the less they like him. Those poll numbers have done nothing but sink since he took the oath of office, and even then they weren't that high. He has now, Donald Trump is zeroing in on 100 days. You know, with Donald Trump, it's always a parallel universe. He says 100 days is a baloney, doesn't mean anything. And then he turns around and says, yes, but if you look at my 100 days, I'm more successful than any president in history. It looks like the Senate Intelligence Committee is asleep at the switch after all. First Lady wannabe, surrogate First Lady, whatever you call her, Ivanka Trump is off to Germany on an official state visit. Who elected her to anything? And yes, he's back. Barack Obama, back. Where else but on the south side of Chicago at the University of Chicago? Yeah, oh man, so much to talk about. Where do we start? Let's start with the 100 days, because it is true. With Donald Trump, there is always a parallel universe, right? There is reality and there's Donald Trump's world. And even in his world, you can have both sides of any issue, like China. On one day, they're raping the United States, quote unquote, because of their currency manipulation. On the next day, they're the best friend we have in the world, and they're going to solve all of our problems in North Korea. We don't have to do a thing. Well, it's the same thing on the 100 days. Donald Trump has said that it's an artificial barrier. He said it's not very meaningful. He also said it's a ridiculous standard. That's what he has said about this idea that you look at what is accomplished in the first 100 days to judge a new president's capacity to govern. At the same time, Donald Trump has turned around and said that he, in fact, had the most successful first 100 days of any president in recent history. And this week, Donald Trump is saying that by Saturday, the 100-day mark, he wants to repeal Obamacare still this week. He wants to introduce and enact tax reform all in a couple of days this week. They're having announced, Sean Spicer told us yesterday at the briefing, a whole series of 100-day briefings. They're having a series of first 100-day receptions. They have launched a first 100-day website. And on Saturday, he has scheduled a first 100-day rally in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is a lot of hullabaloo for something that is a ridiculous standard.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It is funny to watch how they're twisting themselves in knots.
It matters so little to them that they are going to bend over backwards to commemorate it.
Right, exactly. So on the 100 days, and I credit, I'd forgotten this. I credit Major Garrett at CBS News, our friend, who pointed out yesterday that back in October 2016, about 2 weeks before the election, Donald Trump went to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and he made what he called his Gettysburg Address, a la Abe Lincoln. He also offered a contract with America, a la Newt Gingrich, in which he put forth what he was going to accomplish in his first 100 days. So he put out this blueprint. It was a 100-day action plan. There were 28 points in there that he promised that he was going to achieve in his first 100 days. So we've got a standard to go back and take a look at. On that list, there are 10 bills that he promised he was going to introduce and sign with a Republican Congress in the first 100 days, okay? Well, he's got the Republican Congress. He's got the House. He's got the Senate. How many of those 10 bills have been introduced? Not one. Not one. So, I mean, and there are various markers, but, you know, I made a list of some of the things that, and you may want to add to this on Twitter, @BP Show. What has he accomplished? Okay, he did get a Supreme Court justice confirmed. But, you know, I keep coming back to this. That you have to give credit for that to Mitch McConnell, not Donald Trump.
Yeah, right.
I mean, yeah, it would be Merrick Garland. It should be Merrick Garland. Mitch McConnell refused to hold a hearing last year, or let alone a vote, and he left it open. And so once you have the Republican Senate, as long as they change the rules, all Donald Trump had to do was pick somebody from a list that was made up for him by the Federalist Society. He had basically nothing to do with Neil Gorsuch. But I'll give him that one on the plus list. He did reverse position on the Keystone Pipeline. Now he's for it. We were against it before. He has issued an executive order that says we're going to get rid of 2 regulations for every new one that's adopted. Hasn't kicked in yet, but he issued that. And he did say we're going to get out of the TPP, even though we were not in the TPP yet because Congress had not passed it. So, in fact, he just basically withdrew attempts to get the TPP approved. That's kind of the list. Now, he's signed some things. He's signed, by Friday, he will have signed 32 executive orders. He will have signed 22 presidential memorandums. He will have signed 20 proclamations, and he's probably had 139 different meetings in the Oval Office. But what does that all amount to? Nobody can point to anything that it all added up to. It's just a flurry of activity signifying nothing, to get a little Shakespearean here for a while. What did he not accomplish? Well, he promised on that Gettysburg Address he's going to completely undo, redo, whatever, NAFTA. Didn't even touch it. He promised he was going to ban all Muslims from coming into this country. He tried. Federal courts shot it down. Tried twice. Federal courts shot it down, so that's not all. Of course, he promised he was going to repeal Obamacare on day one. No, hasn't done that yet. He promised he was going to deliver tax reform in that first 100 days. Ain't going to happen. I don't care what he says on Wednesday. It's not going to happen. He promised also in that Gettysburg Address he was going to introduce term limits for members of Congress and sign that legislation.
Oh, right.
Yeah, not done.
Where's that?
Not done. Right. He also promised he was going to build the wall, right? Or at least fund the wall. That's not going to happen either. And, of course, on another level, he has not expanded his political base at all. We see that from the poll numbers now in the White House. And, of course, he hasn't, grown at all in terms of learning how to be president. And at least if he has, he's been hiding it. There's no sign that the Donald Trump in the Oval Office is any less impetuous, any less wild-ass crazy than the candidate Donald Trump that we saw on the campaign trail, who just does stuff, throws stuff out there. I mean, look at his tweets. His tweets are just as crazy, just as bad, just as nonstop as they were when he was. So you got to say, and of course, Obamacare. That's the number one thing he didn't do. But on the list in the area of total flops, the one major piece of legislation that he did get introduced, shot down, couldn't even get it out of the House. So I got to say, objectively, and again, by the way, I would agree with Donald Trump. I think this 100-day thing is stupid. We do it every 8 years. And every time we say, no, this is crazy, we shouldn't do this anymore, then we fall into it. I would drop it once and for all. But if you're going to insist that it counts, as Donald Trump does, if you're going to give a speech saying, here's what I'm going to do in the first 100 days, if you're going to brag about you've accomplished more than anybody else, then you've got to be held accountable. And, of course, Donald Trump does it, and Sean Spicer does it every single day. Yesterday, here's Sean Spicer at the briefing saying, now, come on, take it in context, and we've accomplished so much.
It's got to be kept in context, and I think there is sort of this artificial number that gets thrown out. But
the totality, Sean Spicer says, of what we've done, unbelievable.
I think you can go back and find an area, one or two, and say, okay, well, he didn't do this. But I think you have to look at it in totality of what he actually did get done.
Okay, we just looked.
Okay, fine. Yeah, we just did that.
We just looked at the totality of what he did get done, and you know what? He didn't accomplish a damn thing.
People really, I know that this seems petty and like, oh, it's 100 days, you did get that much stuff done. Your point of 100 days is not really that important of a deadline, should be taken, but when he was running for president,
yeah.
Remember all the things on day one, blah, 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 blah. On day one, we're going to do this. We're going to repeal Obamacare on day one. They couldn't even get that done. The thing that Republicans have been promising their constituents, their base, for 7 years now. They couldn't even get that done.
And they have the House, the Senate, and the White House.
Yeah. So they this isn't petty or like, look what you didn't do. You promised to get this done, and you can't get it done, and you have everything available to you to get it done.
I don't.
I wouldn't even talk about this if Donald Trump just said, you know what, I'm not going to play that 100 days game.
Right.
That's silly.
Right.
I would say, you know what, good for you. If he was, we're working on, here are all the things we're working on, and of course it's going to take a little longer than that. These are complicated issues, and our goal is to get them done. There's nothing magic about it has to be done to 100. If he stuck to that, fine. But he's the one who's saying, here's the standard, hold me to the standard. And when you do hold him to the standard, you see it's pretty pathetic. Somebody does know how to get things done, did know how to get things done. Not that he did everything that we wanted him to get done. Barack Obama, back yesterday. Boy, you talk about somebody. He looked relaxed and rested and in good form. He was out at the University of Chicago, meeting with students there, talking about civic involvement, encouraging them to get involved in the life of their community. And that's one way they could really, really make a difference. Barack Obama saying, how great to be home again.
It is wonderful to be home. It is wonderful to be at the University of Chicago. It is wonderful to be on the south side of Chicago. Mm-hmm. And it is wonderful to be with these young people here.
And he's been away for a while, he's over in Tahiti. He's working on his book. So he wanted to sort of like catch up.
So, what's been going on while I've been gone?
Yeah. No, I love when he laughs at his own lies. But, he puts... Also, when he gets in front of a crowd like that, he puts on that, what's been going on while I've been gone?
Yeah.
What's been going on while I've been gone?
He gets very folksy. He gets very folksy.
And of his goals, what's the most important thing he, as a great role model and as a former president, can do?
The single most important thing I can do is to help in any way I can prepare the next generation of leadership.
Yeah, and that's what he was. That's what he was all about yesterday. Meanwhile, on another front, a little. We mentioned this yesterday, and a little flap, not a little flap, a big flap has occurred now in the Democratic Party. A Democratic Party which, God knows, has a lot of work to do, a lot of comeback to do, a lot of reorganization to do, revitalization to do, if you will, under new leadership. And I was feeling pretty good about where the Democratic Party was going, you know. Okay, I supported Keith Ellison, but we got Tom Perez. Tom Perez and Keith Ellison said they're going to work as a team. Keith Ellison, the vice chair of the Democratic Party. We got MoveOn.org and Our Revolution and all the other groups that are working with them to get new candidates and to get candidates out there running for city council and for state legislature and for governor. Not a new life in the party. Emily's List, 11,000 women who signed up to run for office this time around, all at every level. There's a lot of energy out there. You know, the March on Science, the Climate March, the Women's March. Not that they're all Democratic Party activities, but they're certainly part of the opposition to Donald Trump. I'm feeling pretty good. And then Tom Perez and Bernie Sanders go off around the country on a whole series of rallies, you know, to reinvigorate the Democratic Party. And now suddenly the Democratic Party, this has devolved into a fight among Democrats about abortion. This is the last thing the Democratic Party needs. How crazy, how stupid to allow this to happen. But it started when Keith Ellison and Bernie Sanders, the vice chair and Senator Sanders, went to Omaha and endorsed the Democratic candidate for mayor, Heath. You know what? There was a state senator in California that I worked with by the name of Henry Mello.
Oh, so really?
I keep jumping to that. Heath, this is Heath Mello. I don't know whether there's any relation or not. Who is a Democrat, is a progressive, also is a Catholic, and happens to be anti-choice. When that was discovered, suddenly people came out and said, oh, my God, and how could the DNC endorse this guy? How could Bernie Sanders endorse this guy? How could you support any Democrat who is not pro-choice? And then Tom Perez backed off, and yesterday, in effect, said, I mean, I don't have his exact quote in front of me, but I read it again this morning just to be sure he said what he said. And he did. He said, you can't be a Democrat if you're not pro-choice. Oh, my God. How wrong and how unnecessary, and what a stupid, stupid fight. I mean, this is the last thing, again, the Democratic Party needs. Look, to me, I am 1,000% pro-choice, but I think what Nancy Pelosi said on Meet the Press on Sunday is absolutely right. And by the way, there is nobody who is stronger for women's right to choose than Nancy Pelosi. I've known her a long time. This has been one of the big causes and issues of her life. Nobody would dare question Nancy Pelosi's support on this issue. But, you know, here's her practical response to Chuck Todd.
Can you be a Democrat and the support of the Democratic Party if you're pro-life?
Of course. I have served for many years in Congress with members who have not shared my very positive, my family would say, aggressive position on promoting a woman's right to choose.
Yeah, end of story. To me, this is a no-brainer. Democrats, come on. The Democratic Party is the party of choice. Pro-choice Democratic Party. It's in our platform. It's in our DNA. There's no doubt about it.
If you're a Democrat, you should be
absolutely
that's
what the party stands for. Now, are there some Democrats in that under that Democratic Party banner who disagree and who are not pro-choice? Yes. Okay. The Republican Party is a party that opposes a women's right to choose. The Republican Party is the anti-choice, anti-women's productive rights party. No doubt about it. That's in their DNA. That's in their party platform. Are there some Republicans who are pro-choice? Yes. By the way, I've seen a figure, I saw one this morning, that 24% of Democrats actually are anti-choice. I question that number, but that's a big, whatever the percentage is. I think the point is, to me, it's a very practical decision. In a Democratic primary, I would always vote for a pro-choice Democrat over an anti-choice Democrat.
Yeah.
I mean, there could be a case where somebody was so bad on all the other issues, but generally that would be my rule. That's how important it is to me. But you put up an anti-choice Democrat who's good on every other issue, whether it's the death penalty or education or gun control or whatever, environmental, climate change, you name the issue. You put up a Democrat who's good on all those issues, but not good on choice, against a Republican who's bad on every single issue. Damn right I'll vote for that anti-choice Democrat. I mean, it's just,
if the other option is a Trump Republican.
Yeah, no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. So, I mean, come on, Democrats, get off of this. I mean, there's no doubt what the Democratic Party stands for, who the Democratic Party is, what the vast majority of Democrats believe. And we should be big enough as a party to be willing to accept somebody like a Senator Bob Casey from Pennsylvania, who's a damn good Democrat and a damn good senator who happens not to be pro-choice. We should support somebody from, like Tim Kaine, senator from Virginia, who is a Catholic, who his faith tells him abortion is not acceptable. But Tim Kaine has never done anything in his public career as an elected official to take away or to limit a woman's right to choose, and certainly would never vote to overturn Roe v. Wade. So that's the issue. And I can't believe that Democrats have allowed themselves to get into the culture wars and into a war about it. This is the last thing the Democratic Party needs. Let's stand united as Democrats and fight Donald Trump instead of fighting each other. Maybe we could do that. Would that sort of be
for a change?
Yeah.
That would be a change of pace for Democrats to fight the other party.
And I got to tell you, I'm particularly disappointed in Tom Perez. Again, I supported Keith Ellison, but and nothing against Tom. He's always been a strong progressive, and I'm disappointed. This is sort of the first test of his leadership, and I think he failed it.
One of the other things to consider in this argument about where the Democrats stand and how much room we have in the party for views like this is if we're going to win and we're going to be dominant and we're going to govern, we have got to go after some voters who are pro-choice. Or excuse me, are or anti-choice. I should say anti-choice. And so Democrats have this thing where like they look for this pure candidate. And if you're not 100% pure, then you have absolutely no room for them at all. And look, abortion's a big one. Keith Mellow's wrong on abortion. That being said, what's your other option at this point?
By the way, Elizabeth Warren, I just want to point out, Elizabeth Warren also was asked about this yesterday with by Jake Tapper, whether or not you must be pro-choice if you are a Democrat. Elizabeth Warren.
Does there need to be a big tent strategy that brings in pro-life Democrats as well?
So I understand where I am and that not all my colleagues agree with me and not everybody who's a Democrat agrees with me. And that's okay with me. We got to have people in, but we've got to be in the fight. And I am in the fight on choice. I am in the fight on economics because I think this is the heart of where we are as a party.
Well said, Elizabeth Warren. Yes, indeed. Before we take a break, one other little thing to just point out, back to Russia. The Russian connection has not gone away, as no matter how badly Donald Trump would like it to go away. And we know there were 3 investigations underway, and we knew one of them was a joke, right? The House Intelligence Committee, particularly because of Devin Nunes, but even now under the new guy, I don't know who he is, the House is doing nothing. They're never going to get their act together because all they want to do is talk about leaks if they do anything at all. And I think Devin Nunes has destroyed their credibility once and for all. But there was the FBI investigation and the Senate investigation. And we had a lot of confidence in that Senate investigation because Richard Burr and Mark Warner came out and they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this seriously. It's a bipartisan effort. We're going to get to the bottom of this, and the truth will come out. Well, it was reported yesterday by the Daily Beast, our good friend Tim Mack, right? And Michael Isikoff also from NBC, that Don't put up too much hope in what the Senate is doing. There is not one full-time staffer working on the Russian investigation. Not one. There are 7 part-time staffers. Not one of them is a trained investigator. And so far, more than 3 months into their so-called investigation, they have not interviewed one single person from the Donald Trump orbit. Not Paul Manafort, not Roger Stone, not Jared Kushner, nobody, and not even one person working on this full time. So it looks like
Getting swept away, man.
It looks like we're all going to have to depend on James Comey doing the right thing to take on Donald Trump. Yeah, how's that going to work? How much trust do you have in James Comey after what he did to Hillary Clinton? Oh, my God, man, I got to tell you. All right, let's move on. Eliza Collins joins us next from USA Today to talk about, will there be, among other topics, will there be a shutdown of the government this week? Stay tuned.
What's been going on while I've been gone?
Get social with Bill Press. Like us at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. This is the Bill Press Show.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. At work or at play, you're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Oh, hey, she's cute. Nice going, man. Things are going great for you. You've earned a night out. Good drinks, good friends. Yeah, we can go ahead and call this a good night. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Not smart. Yeah, I saw that coming. Say goodbye to her. Ouch, that'll hurt your bank account. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. I hope you like eating frozen dinners. Alone. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
It's harder whenever there's a bigger group. Pretty much a good day for me would be people leaving their hands off of me. I'm always called names. Everywhere that I go, there's always someone calling me names, calling me gay. I've been choked, thrown up against a wall, punched. Nobody's ever tried to help me.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees?
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you'll go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Live video, Bill's commentary, the best clips from the show, all in one place. YouTube.com/The Bill Press Show.
What do you say on a Tuesday, April 25? Good to see you today. Hello, hello, and welcome to the Bill Press Show. As we tackle the big stories of the day from our nation's capital, we're brought to you today by the United Steelworkers and their international president, Leo Gerard. By the way, you may have seen Leo Gerard in a photo from the Oval Office last week when President Trump signed an executive order saying that we should investigate how we're going to stop the Chinese from exporting so much steel. And, of course, that's good news for steelworkers. And so Leo Gerard, who hates Donald Trump, had to be there.
That's tough.
Standing in back of him. I saw the photo in the New York Times with this glum expression on the face of Leo Gerard. And I emailed him and I said, I know why you had to be there, but you didn't look very happy.
Yeah, I get that.
And he acknowledged it was a tough moment for him. But at any rate, the United Steelworkers, great leadership of Leo Gerard. Check out their website at usw.org. So the Congress is back, which brings a big smile to the face of Eliza Collins, a congressional reporter for USA Today.
Makes you happier.
No more recess.
No. Aren't you glad to have those boys and girls back in town?
I am. I missed
you
the
missed
Capitol.
them, didn't you?
I did.
Oh, yeah, right.
Missed those
Liar.
late nights standing outside of their meetings, seeing if they're going to do health care.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. So let's cut right to the chase. Is the government going to shut down at the end of the week?
I don't think so. Well, we heard, so the one kind of sticking point that we've been hearing about is wall funding. That's something that the president is insisting on. It sounds like Republicans and Democrats were actually doing pretty well negotiating and in a bipartisan fashion, but the White House wants some wins before 100 days, so they said they were going to insist on wall funding. We're now seeing Politico's reporting that last night Trump had a reception with conservative media outlets to thank them for their fair coverage, is what he said.
Yeah, I know. Right.
And during that, he made some news, and he said...
That's right. I'm just waiting for the reception that he'll have for the progressive and the liberal media
I think you're
outlets.
next week. I think you're next week for
so,
your fair
right.
coverage. He said basically that, yes, it might happen, wall funding might happen this week, or it might happen in September, which is kind of a sign that they were maybe backing off, because it would be a bad thing if the government shuts down because the White House is insisting on this wall that Democrats will not do, and a lot of Republicans don't even want at this point. Wouldn't look good.
Right. I heard Chuck Schumer say that there is not one Republican who represents the border that supports the wall. Is that correct?
I think that's a broad way to say that, but I do know that
But
Republicans,
there are a lot of
right?
I've seen several Texas Republicans who represent that area.
Who said it's not going to work?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that when you talk to someone like a John McCain or Jeff Flake, they're not going to outright say the wall doesn't work, but they'll say things like we need E-Verify or technology. So I think Republicans are still trying not to break too much with their president, but everybody, when you talk to Republicans and especially staff, they're like, yeah, well, the wall's not going to actually be on the wall. And I'm like, or on the border. And I'm like, well, that's what he promised.
Right.
So there's a little bit of division.
This is such a big thing for the Trump administration, though, the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And it's become so cloudy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was very, very easy on the campaign trail. We're going to build a wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it. And so now it's become, well, we're going to pay for the wall, and we might end up getting some money back from Mexico for a little bit further on down the line. We're not totally sure how. And then, we're not going to build the wall on the border specifically. We haven't even gotten to the fight about eminent domain, and the wall is going to have to go through like a lot of private property. There's a lot of land there. And so to me, this is one of those things that Trump sold it as something very simple, and it's actually very, very complex. And this is not something the Trump administration does well, complex issues. They don't do it very well. We saw with the Muslim ban. It's a complicated issue, and they got shot down twice.
This is, I recognize a tangent, but since we've gone off on this tangent, I'll come back to this week. But as one more example, I never heard of anybody talk about this before, but Scott Pelley, CBS News last night, did a piece about the difficulty of building the wall. There is on the border an Indian reservation. This Indian reservation Half of it's in the United States, and the other half is in Mexico. 62 miles of the border. This Indian reservation is the size of Connecticut.
Yeah.
62 miles of the border. So this isn't even federal property. It's by treaty. Right. Now, we could, again, screw the Indians like we've done, our entire history, but this is sacred Indian land.
You can't just split it up.
You can't just split it up. Right. And what are we going to do about that? I mean, does Trump even know that? Does he even think? So the whole concept of the wall. But again, what has really made what looked like a smooth path to a continuing resolution to keep the government open has suddenly been thrown this obstacle by the Trump White House, at least initially saying, we want funding for the wall in that bill.
Right. And they're not they haven't completely backed off. It's reports that he said maybe now, maybe September.
Yeah.
I do think that's significant because Trump is a master of spin, and if he can kind of start planting the seeds that it's not going to be this weekend, maybe, then by the time Friday rolls around, it won't be such a shock to his supporters who were like, wait, where's that wall funding?
Okay. So first he says we're going to have the funding for the wall. Now he says maybe not. All right. He also says before the end of the week, before 100 days, we're going to have repeal of Obamacare. Is that going to happen?
I don't think that's going to happen. That is something that I've been covering very closely. And I spent, I guess, 2 weeks ago, the first week of recess in North Carolina with Mark Meadows, who was, of course, one of the leaders on opposition of Obamacare, but he's also really close with Trump. And so after that happened, he went back to the table really quick and was like, let's try to find a deal. How much of that is spin for not wanting to be blamed for this? How much of that is, actually wanting a thing? We don't know. But so all last week, him and Tom MacArthur, who is Tuesday Group, which is moderate Republicans, have been wheeling and dealing. And they came up with this amendment released last week. Apparently, it would bring on 25 to 30 Freedom Caucus members, which would, of course, be enough to pass this bill.
Well, how many Tuesday Group members would it lose?
Not clear. The thing about the bill is that, or the amendment, is that I looked at it, and it basically brings back a bunch of different parts of Obamacare that are really popular. So under 26, pre-existing conditions, you can't be discriminated against for age. So the moderates can go home to New York and New Jersey and these places that are fairly liberal or at least more moderate and say, look, I'm bringing all of this stuff back. The conservatives win, which I would argue is more powerful on this, is that any state can waive those things if they prove that premiums are going to go down. Well, of course, premiums are going to go down if you get rid of mandates because it's going to be cheaper.
Right.
So, but both of them arguably could go spin it, and a place like New York and New Jersey probably won't waive those things. So they kind of do make out with more mandates than before.
But where's the bill?
Bill hasn't come. And that was the thing.
Well, yeah, so you can't pass it without the bill.
So that was what I was told coming Friday night, coming Saturday, and so all weekend we were like on bill watch and never shut up. And yesterday I texted a bunch of guys in the Freedom Caucus and was like, a bunch of aides, and was like, got the text? Have you gotten the text? No, nothing else. Just no, period.
Wow.
Because the White House said they were coming out with text, and then they also said that it would be voted on, I think, Thursday. So tax reform Wednesday, healthcare Thursday, government shutdown Friday.
Yeah.
Which was already pretty wacky.
Insane.
Yeah, so it's again back to Trump wanting 100-day wins.
You have to wonder whether Trump really understands how Congress works. I mean, there are also, by the way, we're just talking about the House now, right? There's also, by the way, there's also the Senate.
Which are like a little bit more the grown-ups in the room.
Yeah, and the idea which is not going to happen, that you could even get it out of the House on Wednesday or Thursday.
That was supposed to be Thursday sandwich between tax reform and government shutdown.
Okay. That you get it out of the House on Thursday. You're going to get it out of the Senate in one day?
No.
I mean, no.
And the Senate is not going to be okay with this. I mean, it's a master-crafted bill because everyone can go home and say they won. The Senate is not going to be okay with that. You already have...
Yeah. They're smarter.
And you'll lose Republicans quick. Susan Collins is not okay with the Planned Parenthood defund. You have Lisa Murkowski, who might also not be okay. You have a bunch of senators who are uncomfortable with the Medicaid. I mean, there are things that were in the original bill that people are still stuck on.
So there's not going to be a government shutdown. There's not going to be repeal of Obamacare. But can we remind ourselves that Republicans control all three branches of government here?
Right.
And they control all three branches of government, yes, but also the House, the Senate, and the White House.
Right. And promised repeal.
And they still can't
for 7
get their
years.
act together. I mean, this is not Democrats versus Republicans. This is Republicans who can't get their act together.
Well, and that's such an
Correct?
interesting thing about the government shutdown is you saw Chuck Schumer say, hey, Mitch McConnell and I were working very well on this. Why? I think at one point he told Mick Mulvaney, who's the Office of Management and Budget, head of it, to just stay out. We've got this. And then the White House said, well, we want the wall.
Yeah. Right.
So it's actually this weird kind of bipartisan. I mean, Obamacare repeal will not be bipartisan, but you're seeing Congress who understand the rules and things
in terms of
easy.
keeping the government running, right, without all these outside stuff thrown on it, like Trump is doing with the wall. So let's go back to Wednesday and tax reform. The president says, how big it is, how complicated it is, how important it is, and he's going to announce his plan on Wednesday, and we're going to have that by the 100 days.
Well, the plan by 100 days, but apparently that won't be done for months. But the plan I'm hearing is going to be pretty broad. No one's really expecting a lot of detail. And then we're hearing that Trump's going to cut the corporate tax rate to 15%, which even some Republicans are saying, that's not going to work. That's a massive, it's 35.
Yeah, 35 to 15. So his definition of tax reform is cutting his own corporate taxes.
Well, and there will be apparently individual, and there will be, I saw that you can put it on a postcard. You can do your tax returns on a postcard. But the one number, I believe I've only seen that one number, which is 35 to 15%.
Right. No, we haven't seen anything more. Well, it's interesting. I was at the briefing on Friday where Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin came in talking about the financial executive orders Trump was going to sign that afternoon. And he got some questions about tax reform. This was at noon on Friday, and he said, again, it's very complicated. We are working on it. We're having meetings. It's going to take some time to put a plan together, but that's what we're working on with members of Congress, with members of the administration. And, over the next couple of weeks, months, whatever, we'll kind of roll it out, right? That afternoon, Donald Trump says, next Wednesday, you're going to see my plan. Which Steve Mnuchin, I'm sure, said, what the hell?
He's like, I just said months.
Yeah.
Well, I really think this 100-day thing is a big deal for Trump. I think Trump is an image-conscious guy.
Yeah.
And
he says it's not.
Right.
On the other hand,
I think had he had some policy wins, he would have, this would be blasted everywhere.
100 Days is a very simple, even in terms of like branding, right? Like, which is where he lives. It's a very simple concept to grasp. Presidents can point to their first 100 days and say, this is what I got done in the first 100 days. A lot of presidents have done it. Donald Trump, not a details guy. This is very low on details. You know what I mean? So, like, this really does mean something to him.
And he's a cable news guy. And think about the lower thirds. Trump's 100 days.
Yeah.
He knows that. He's brand. So he can say it's not a big deal. What did he say? It's not a big deal, even though I did a lot. Supreme Court justice,
right.
which was arguably his biggest win for Republicans and conservatives was Neil Gorsuch. But right now, policy-wise, Obamacare, no. Tax reform, no. Can't even get wall spending, which was his campaign.
Now, as Peter Baker points out this morning in the New York Times, he said about the 100-day test, it's an artificial barrier. It's not very meaningful. It's a ridiculous standard, right? At the same time, we were told yesterday at the White House that this week they're going to have first 100-day briefings, so we all know what was accomplished. There's a whole series of first 100-day receptions. They have set up a first 100-day website at the White House. And, of course, on Saturday, he's going to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, for a first 100-day rally to celebrate all that he has accomplished in his first 100 days.
Which is weird because if they don't want to draw attention to it,
they should, yes.
they should maybe not do that.
Right.
Yeah, maybe not. Right.
But
And
Trump loves a rally.
But I think the
And
more
it,
attention
invigorates it.
the more attention they draw to it, as we talked about in our first half hour together today, and the closer you look, not at the flurry of activity, but what was actually accomplished on the ground, not a lot there.
But my question is, how many people are looking that close? We're in Washington. We're in this all the time. Is the average voter, are they looking that close?
No.
I think the Obamacare repeal is a big, I think people know that.
Yeah.
But other than that,
no.
Trump signs a bunch of things. They see it. They see American workers, the economy. People feel that's one thing that he has a lot of confidence on. I don't know.
I think that's a valid point. I do think that's a valid point.
But I think the polls show that I think the American people see through the smokescreen. 42% approval rating. It's the lowest of any president in modern times. Despite all this flurry of activity, they don't see anything happening.
That's another interesting thing where Trump calls attention to negative things. He was tweeting all about those polls yesterday, which he used to do during the campaign. But he was saying, despite these polls being lies, they're not that bad. And it was like, well, it's the lowest rating in modern history. Yeah. Why would you call attention to it?
So overall, I think there's an issue here that underlies everything we've been talking about, underscores everything we've been talking about, which is, what is the relationship between Republicans in Congress and Donald Trump? I mean, a lot of them didn't support him. We know that. But now he's the president. He's the president of their party. You would think they'd be working pretty closely together. Dan Balls has a piece in the Washington Post this morning pointing out that there's this real, conflict between his kind of Republican or his kind of personality, maybe, right, businessman, and the way Congress operates.
Well, I think what you said, he's the president and he's the president of their party. And I think they have to give him that. And we saw, we're already...
But that doesn't mean they bend over, right?
Right. I think at first there was a little bit more, I don't know if a trust given or what is the right word, but because they had to have an ambitious agenda. But now I think that they're saying, like, okay, the White House is coming over and talking to Congress, and it's not really helping. Trump is very close with the Freedom Caucus. He couldn't get the Freedom Caucus on board.
He brought them all down to the White House.
A lot. And Pence, I was with Meadows in North Carolina, and this was Healthcare Reboot 1000. But Meadows was talking to a civics class, and I was sitting next to his chief, and Mike Pence called multiple times. They're close. They're talking. These guys are powerful. But if they can't bring them on board, I think, the moderate businessman establishment Republican who cares about the rules of Congress, who doesn't love Trump, who doesn't love the administration, is kind of like, what were you good for? You're supposed to help us with our ambitious agenda, and if you can't even help us with that, we're not going to defend those late night tweet storms. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're there yet, but I think you're starting to see frustration.
Right. How does Paul Ryan survive?
Paul Ryan's in a tough spot.
He is. Yeah, he is.
God, I feel so sorry for him.
Yeah, but it just breaks my heart.
God bless him.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of pressure for him to give Trump some wins right now. Back to this 100-day thing. I also think there's pressure. Paul Ryan knows that things need to pass. Last week with, again, Healthcare Reboot, the leadership was saying, yeah, we'll bring that up when we can have the votes. We're not doing that again. We're not talking about this unless we know we have the 216 votes. So I think he's knows his caucus, and he knows his caucus is divided. And then he has a president they don't have a lot of history. It's a good relationship.
The whole disaster of the repealing of Obamacare, and to be clear, it was a disaster. It was a total debacle. For all the grief that Donald Trump got for that was Paul Ryan's failing. You look at, Trump didn't do any favors, but Paul Ryan was the guy that made this sort of arbitrary deadline to vote on it when they didn't have the votes. He's the guy that had 7 years to come up with a better plan for Republicans, or at least show the way, and just completely flatlined.
I think there was probably a mix because I think that Ryan might have come up with that deadline, but that's not. I don't think Ryan would have come up with such a short deadline had there not been pressure from the White House. Because Ryan understands whipping and he understands these things and he understands what the Freedom Caucus can do. I think we saw the bill was rushed. What was it, like 18 days or something?
Yeah, right.
I think had the White House not been pushing for this, Trump said this would happen day one. So now we're on, day 60? He's like, come on, get this to happen.
But also, Ryan did commit to them that he could deliver in that time frame, and he didn't. They put all their faith in Paul Ryan, and he failed. He failed. I was just noticing, by the way, that Donald J. Trump tweeting just a minute ago that he is proud of Ivanka Trump for her leadership on these important issues. Looking forward to hearing her speak at the W20. So
in
Ivanka
Germany.
Trump is she is almost the acting first lady, right, in the absence of Melania.
I would argue, yeah.
Yeah, and
She's
she is
definitely out
being
front.
sent as representing the United States, representing the President of the United States to this summit on women's issues and other issues, I guess, in Berlin.
Yeah.
Which is certainly unusual, to say the least.
Well, just
the
before
first daughter, right?
Yeah.
That's
elevated to that status.
There's lots of unusual things right now. But as I was just walking in, I was looking at Twitter, and reporters that are with her she said something like, "My dad has been a champion of women or families," and she was booed and hissed.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think she's getting the easiest reception. Although Ivanka is diplomatic. She's probably having more diplomatic conversations than someone else in the administration. Or
but if they wanted somebody to speak on women's issues, they could have sent Bill O'Reilly, Donald Trump's friend, or Trump himself, the two of them, right?
Yeah, right.
Oh, man. Talking so much about the House, what's going on in the Senate?
I don't know. We just talk about the House all the time.
I know. No.
The Senate
They just seem to be sitting back and,
I think
they did confirm Neil Gorsuch by changing the rules, right? But other than that, they've been on the sidelines almost.
I do think, and this is an argument that they make, but I think in some ways it's true. They're in the staffing business right now. They're constantly dealing with these appointments.
Yeah.
And it really
Which have not been made, a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of them have not been made. But they're still, they just did Sonny Perdue yesterday.
Yes,
They are still staffing the cabinet, and as much flack as you want to give them, that does take, the Senate has all these rules, and you have to open it and leave it open for a long time, and then debate, and there's, it's a pretty party line thing, and so there's lots of back and forth on all of these people. I do think that's a big time suck. I also think the Senate is sort of like Obamacare repealed, things like that. They're like, let the House.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just keep thinking of the Russia probe when the House committee just had that complete disaster. And then the Senate came out and we're like, we are the grown-ups in the room. I trust you. No, I trust you. No, I trust you. And I think it's like that.
Although we did learn yesterday they haven't gotten a hell of a lot done, and they don't even have one full-time staffer working on it. At any rate, you heard it from Eliza Collins. She knows for USA Today, usatoday.com, that there will be no Obamacare repeal this week, no tax reform. But the government will keep running. Thank you, Eliza. Great to see you.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You taught him how to hit a baseball.
Just like that. Say hi!
How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Now we know what Donald Trump thinks tax reform is all about. Cutting his corporate taxes for the Trump empire from 35% to 15%. Screw the rest of you. He'll take care of himself. Hello, everybody. Here we go. Tuesday, April 25. It is the Bill Press Show. So good to see you today, and thank you for joining us as we boom out to you coast to coast from our studio on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. That's our nation's capital. We'll bring you up to date on all the news of the day here from Washington, around the country, and around the globe. And most importantly, look forward to hearing from you what you think about it all. You know how to do so. Go on Twitter and send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show. Simple enough. There's so much going on. We can't get through it all without the help of good friends. And one of our favorites here joining us for this hour as a FOB, friend of Bill, Emma Roller, formerly with the New York Times, now with Fusion senior reporter. Hi, Emma.
Yes, hi.
Nice to see you. Congratulations on the new
back.
job.
Thank you. Starting my second week there.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Off and running and already stirring things up.
Yes, already mixing it up. It's like prison. You have to go and beat up someone on your first day.
It's
right?
exactly like you have to find somebody, the biggest, baddest person in there, and then you have to take him down.
Peter would know.
Whoa. Too real.
Yes. New job, sort of like serving in prison. Never thought of that.
Yeah.
Put those two together, but there we go. Anyhow, we will jump into the news of the day with Emma Roller and with all of you. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of the stories making news. How about this? In New Jersey, a post office worker, a postal worker, mail carrier, was using her job to smuggle cocaine. Which really, if you're going to do it, is pretty good idea, right? Because, you're always on the road, you're moving around a lot. You know what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. She's been arrested with first-degree narcotics violations. What she was doing is she had cocaine and then was making the rounds on her postal run and was making cocaine drops as well. Along with dropping off the mail, she was also dropping off cocaine. She has been busted and been caught and been charged with 2 counts of first-degree possession of cocaine with intent to distribute and related conspiracy charges. So,
got it. My postal delivery man or person is just so much more boring.
I was going to say, it's right in the tagline, neither snow nor
Wow.
You win. Yeah. Well, this is one way they could compete with, FedEx and UPS, just, slinging on the side. This is kind of screwed up. The TV writers just authorized a strike that would black out late night.
Yeah.
We talked about this before. We weren't sure if they were going to do this or not, but the TV writers have voted, and the Writers Guild of America, they voted overwhelmingly to authorize a strike. This is all comes down to a contract agreement with the Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television Producers. They need to get this agreement reached before May 1st. They don't have an agreement yet. So we might not see late night shows, Saturday Night Live, Colbert.
All of them, huh?
All of them. All of them are going to go dark because they're not going to have any rates. It's a lot.
That's a lot of power.
Yeah, right. So if it would begin May 2nd. It would cause an immediate late night blackout. So we don't know how long it could last. But
so which would be worse for New York, a transit strike or a late night writer's strike?
Considering how much our current president watches,
no doubt,
like Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Does he still watch SNL?
I think so.
You think
so?
so?
Yeah.
I do think so.
He watches it all.
Yeah. I do think he just consumes all of it.
I love that Bannon loved the portrayal of him on Saturday Night Live, but Trump hated it.
Yeah. But
Bannon is the Grim Reaper on SNL.
In a weird, messed up way, these types of shows have more influence over Trump than a lot of legitimate news sources. So they're kind of important these days, I think.
He is the most compulsive TV watcher.
Yeah.
Well, did you read that, his interview with AP?
I did, and we'll talk about it. Yes. All right.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
How about it on a Tuesday, April 25? Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Bill Press Show here. Bringing you up to date on the news of the day from our nation's capital, our studio here on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and we are reaching out to you on every possible platform, all part of the Young Turks Network. We're looking at you on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. That's where you find us, and that's where you sign up to be a regular follower and supporter of the program. Doesn't cost you anything, so just go sign up, and you'll hear from us several times a day with important updates on the news of the day. We're looking at you on Free Speech TV. Great to see you nationwide on Free Speech TV, and also in the Chicago area, joining you on WCPT. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Send us your comments at any time on any topic on Twitter at BP Show. Maraller here from Fusion. What's going to happen this week? Are we going to have a government shutdown?
I mean, Sean Spicer said that the White House says it likely won't happen, so that is worrisome in itself. That Sean Spicer said it's not going to happen.
That means it could.
That means it's going to happen. That means there is like a 100% chance.
At least a 95% chance it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, what do you think?
I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think that. I think they realize that that would be political suicide.
Yeah.
And
the fact that Trump backed off of the wall funding a little bit, and kicked it down the road a little bit.
Yeah, and his tweet about it had about 5 different qualifying clauses in it. And it was, we need to start later so we can wait. We can.
I want to pull it up because it's such a disaster.
I know. It was such a contrast, as you're pulling up, such a contrast to what he said during the campaign, which had no conditions whatsoever. It was emphatic. We're going to build the wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it, period. End of story.
And then he tweeted, eventually, but at a later date, so we could get started early, Mexico will be paying in some form for the badly needed border wall.
At a later date, so we can get started.
Eventually, at a later date, so we can get started early, Mexico will be paying in some form for the badly needed border wall.
I was talking to a friend last night, and it's like it's our problem for not having, like, knowing the very pioneering new, like, verb tense that he's using there. So it makes total sense.
The man is a visionary.
Yeah, it's like a future perfect past clause.
But you know, when I was in grade school, I know the dork forever, but I used to love to diagram sentences. Isn't that what you call it?
Did you like to diagram? Nobody likes diagramming sentences.
You have to send, and then I could remember putting all those little.
You should diagram his tweets.
That's what I was.
That's impossible to diagram.
No, that would be impossible to diagram. Yeah. So all the pride that I took in learning to diagram sentences.
That must drive you crazy.
Oh yeah, I hear something like that. I'm thinking. There's so many
doing algebra in your head.
Yeah,
right. But going back to the border wall promise, the stories of the past week have made me think about, I was with a bar full of Trump supporters on election night in Tampa, and, when he won.
There's a line.
Yikes.
When when it became clear that he was going to win, I went and talked to everyone, like, about, what promises do you hope that he follows through on? What do you think he should get done in his first 100 days? And the top 2 things were build the wall and repeal Obamacare. And look at where those 2 promises have gone. And he said in an interview that, he's being held to, or maybe it was a tweet, that he's being held to an unfair standard. But his campaign released a 100 days memo.
Yes. And we talked a little earlier. I didn't realize I'd forgotten this because he made so many promises. But Major Garrett on CBS News last night pointed out, and he raised this question at the briefing as well, that two weeks before the election in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump gave a "My First 100 Days" speech.
Right.
He called it his Gettysburg Address, and he had 28 specific points that he was going to accomplish in the first 100 days, including 10 pieces of legislation, not one of which has been introduced.
I really think that.
So he laid the marker out.
Yeah, I really think that, not only Trump's ego is butting up against reality, but also, the realities of who he's appointed to be on his cabinet. There was an interesting statistic or factoid in a recent story about how none of the senior White House leadership has passed a major bill before through Congress. So it's no surprise that they're having so much trouble putting together a real platform and governing now that even though they control all branches of government, essentially.
Right. And of course, with Trump on the one hand saying, it's a ridiculous standard. We should just forget about this 100 days, which I would agree with, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, saying I've accomplished more than any other president in history, then that forces you to actually look at what he has accomplished in the real world. What concrete thing? You think of the three big things, right? Were from his campaign: repeal Obamacare, ban all Muslims from coming to this country, build the wall.
Right.
All the three of them. None of them not accomplished.
But which is not to underestimate how much damage the Trump administration has been able to do for
that's key
immigrants.
too. Yes.
And especially what we've seen with DACA, even though he's kind of walked that back.
Or the damage they've been able to do to the environment, particularly through environmental undoing environmental
unwinding
regulation.
Those environmental regulations.
Right. And rolling the clock back on climate change. I mean, I think in that area it's been maybe his most damaging of all.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest to, because it's not visible or it's not as tangible as an embarrassing tweet, but that, I think you're right, that could very well be his legacy. Yeah.
Now, there's a big effort now to revitalize, reboot the Democratic Party. You're suggesting in your reporting that one big issue they may be missing the boat on is pot?
Yes, so I wrote this for Fusion on 420.
Blaze it.
Blaze it all day long.
And I saw you guys had fun on your 420
I was going to
show.
say, we celebrated on 420.
I'm just a little offended you didn't invite me
on.
Oh, you
should have come.
I'm joking.
Yeah,
you got baked.
That was the strongest pot I ever smoked.
Oh, my bad, dude. I brought that in.
No, why? As Alex Jones says, George Soros has been making
That's that George Soros
the pot
weed.
stronger.
I brought you that George Soros weed.
Were you testing it to make sure to test the strength?
That's the only reason I even smoke pot anymore. I only smoke pot. I have to test it, make sure. Because George Soros has made the weed so much stronger. I have to make sure to test it every day, every single day.
Thanks, Alex.
That was amazing. Did you eat any chili today? Are you forgetting?
Don't ask me the tough questions. I had a bowl of meat and chili and beans, and I can't remember things very well right now.
But I had to write a column after that.
Yo, that was poor planning on your part.
How did that turn out?
He has no idea.
It's the craziest column I ever wrote. I don't even remember what I wrote about.
Anyway.
All right, yes, back to your story.
So I wrote a story. The headline is Memo to Democrats, Weed is Extremely Popular, You Dorks, which is a headline I probably could have never gotten away with at the Venerable Gray Lady.
I love it.
But
I'd love to have seen that headline on the op-ed page of the New York Times.
For Democrats, an opening, weed is popular. No, but seriously, I argue in this piece that, not to equate all of these social issues, but like abortion and like same-sex marriage before it, legalized marijuana is an extremely important social issue. And it sort of gets, made into a joke, becomes the butt of a joke of like, oh, only, stoners in college care about legalized weed or, kind of that stereotype. But legalizing marijuana would have huge ramifications for criminal justice reform and especially for the Black community, because Black marijuana users, even though, across racial groups, there's pretty much the same rate of marijuana use, but Black Americans get arrested for marijuana use at almost 4 times the rate as white Americans. And that disparity is even higher in cities like Chicago, which seems a little counterintuitive because you think of big cities like that as being liberal, but obviously there's still the police disparities at work. So I argue that Democrats should embrace legalizing marijuana and underlining it as a criminal justice issue, not so much as this sort of jokeified issue.
Yeah. Amen to that, by the way. And it is refreshing to know that there is a pot caucus in the United States Congress now. Our good friend, Congressman Sam Farr, who retired this year, was one of the founders of it. But there's still plenty of members left who for all those reasons you point out, are supporting and have for a long time. And by the way, Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah.
Like Dana
And
Rohrabacher from
sure.
Orange County, who's a known pothead.
Right. There are openings on both sides. I just argued this for Democrats because Jeff Sessions is the Attorney General, and he's extremely anti.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, to me, right, like for pot smokers, recreational or medicinal or whatever, for years we've been seeing us just slide towards this inevitable legalization.
Sure.
Right? Like I thought it was just a matter of time. And I thought I'd see legalization across the board in my lifetime. But with Trump and with Jefferson Sessions and all these other sort of anti-pot crusaders that have the ear of the president, it's clear that the fight goes on. And the point you make is like Democrats should just get on board, just get over this whole weird
right.
stereotype.
And I think there's
embrace it.
Right. I think there is still a stigma that exists. It's like the same problem that the Democrats have, in my opinion, on single payer. They tend to think that their own constituency is a lot more conservative than it actually is. The CBS poll I cite in there says, I think around 61% of Americans favor legalizing the use of marijuana. Single payer is, or I should clarify, having the government provide for health care is also extremely popular, and yet Democrats in Congress are very wary to, publicly endorse this, even though privately they may very well support this, and it's a test of political courage.
Yeah, but you know what? I was always disappointed in the Obama administration because their position remained the same on the federal level, but at least Obama looked the other way, whatever the states were doing. That was a little tense there for a while, but he and Eric Holder made the decision they were not going to prosecute or enforce federal anti-marijuana laws in states where voters had voted to legalize.
I'm a little.
Now,
sorry. Go ahead.
But the problem now is that this administration is just the exact opposite, and so we could very well see feds swooping into Colorado, Oregon, California, where people
DC.
have D.C. People have the legal right for recreational purposes to smoke marijuana, and they would, or to eat it or whatever, imbibe it, and they would come in and arrest them and charge them with a federal crime. That's the policy of this administration, which really is just ass backwards. My judgment.
I'm a little surprised that they haven't moved more quickly to do that.
I know. Well, they'd get some pushback from the states for sure.
Oh, definitely, especially because in states like Colorado, marijuana has been a huge economic boom for them.
Yeah. Huge.
And by the way, the federal agents, I'm pretty sure I'm correct in saying this, it would be almost impossible for them to swoop into a locality without having the cooperation of the local law enforcement, who really realize now that they've got a lot better things to do, right? Plus, half of them are probably smoking pot anyhow. But I often wondered, at one point, I thought it was a race to see who would get to the 50-point first. Same-sex marriage or recreational use of marijuana. Clearly, same-sex marriage took off, right?
I think people forget
now the law of the land. But
I think people forget how very quickly the gay marriage debate accelerated and completely flipped from most Americans opposing it to a huge plurality supporting it.
No, it was in a matter of
and so I sort of
less than a decade, maybe 3, 4, 5 years.
I do wonder if we're entering that kind of period of acceleration with marijuana, but again,
well, we're at 8 states plus the District of Columbia.
Mhm.
I believe that's the count. Of course, we celebrated
right.
it.
There's a tipping point, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know how many states are up this
Mhm.
week. What has to happen, as our friends, I do recall this from our conversation on 420, pointed out, is so far all the states, everything that's happened has been by referendum, not by legislative action. I think Rhode Island could be the first state that does that enacts by legislation. The legislature does it, which means that it could happen a lot faster.
And that's a good point, because if
and once that starts,
then other Democrats in office will maybe see, oh, they're not getting kicked out of office for voting for this.
Right. Now, Emma Rollo's with us from Fusion. Fusion.net is where you follow her and her colleagues there. Yeah, I agree with almost everything you write for the New York Times or for Fusion. Yeah. But really, you're calling on Dianne Feinstein, my friend, my senior senator from California. You think she ought to step down?
Well, okay.
Why?
Bill. If you read the piece, it is a very polite piece, and I do not want to discount any of Senator Feinstein's accomplishments in office. She introduced the assault weapons ban. She's been an outspoken women's health advocate, obviously, and she and Barbara Boxer and Nancy Pelosi created this triumvirate of female power in California that has never, had never been seen at the national level before, really. That said, she is the oldest serving senator. She is 83 years old.
Is she older than Orrin Hatch?
Yeah, she's the oldest currently serving senator. But Orrin Hatch is, I
believe you, but Orrin Hatch looks so old. She doesn't. She doesn't.
No. But my point in the piece is that the average Democratic the average Democratic voter in California is, I would say, significantly farther to the left in their ideology than where Senator Feinstein is. And I feel like this is a good opportunity for her to retire gracefully. And I saw that her husband might be sick, and I've seen recent reports that, she's going to sort of consider her health situation and make a decision in the next 6 months. But my point is, there's no reason to play at this charade of maybe I will run when I'm 84. I really don't think she's planning to run for re-election, but it's this sort of song and dance that you have to play to retain your political power. My point is, why not, just get out in front of the story early, say you're going to retire, and ensure that you can have a really strong slate of candidates. So that's basically my position, but willing to.
I'm not going to throw you out of the studio because you took that sit. But I would say it's personal for me that in 99 cases out of 100, I would totally agree with you. And I've made the point myself. You've had a good run. You've done a great job. Get out of the way and make room for the next generation of leadership. And we love you. And more people, I think, should have taken the opportunity. And by the way, and some people, by not taking that opportunity, end up losing, right? And then what could have been the glorious end of their career ends up an embarrassing loss. And there are many, many examples of people like that.
Yeah, and it's not like if she does decide to run for re-election, that somehow, it's California. They're going to elect a Democrat.
Yeah. The exception I make is for Dianne because I think she's been such a great senator, and she's a very close personal friend, and she is full of, she not only looks a lot younger than she is, but she is full of energy. She's one of the most hardest working, energetic, dynamic members of the U.S. Senate today, who happens to be the oldest member of the Senate.
Yeah, she was criticized for a recent town hall she had in San Francisco, but she was very energetic and interacting with the crowd. And,
oh yeah.
By the way, we got some comments.
And
if
you have her, by the way, if you have her on your side, I'm telling you, she is a
Powerhouse.
bulldog. Yeah, I mean, she'll go after that and never let go. On the other hand, if she's against you on an issue, you might as well just throw in the towel because she won't stop. She is a fighter.
We got some comments on this in our chat room, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. A bunch of people already saying that if she does step down, Ted Lieu, our friend Ted Lieu, we've had on the show, Ted Lieu should be the guy.
He would be great.
Yeah, that we should look at.
No,
So
I love Ted Lieu.
He's going around a lot there. Somebody also pointed out that Feinstein recently told a crowd that she opposed single payer.
Right. So that was sort of the peg for this. She gave a town hall in San Francisco, and a constituent asked her how she will support moving toward a single payer healthcare system, and she said, if single payer means the government providing health care for everyone, I'm not there yet. And the crowd did not like that answer at all.
I think it's the wrong answer.
No, I do too. I understand where she's in the sense that she is the daughter of a doctor, a very famous doctor in San Francisco.
Oh, I didn't know
very
that.
Very successful at the time. And her first husband, who died of cancer, I believe, certainly passed away. She and Dick Blum have been married for a long time, but her first husband was a doctor as well. So that's kind of her.
Where she's coming from.
Where she's coming from, yeah. So overall, we are now, like it or not, at the 100-day mark in the Trump administration. Has this presidency proved to be what you expected or worse than you expected? Yeah, because you were out. We talked to you so often during the campaign. You were out on the trail, particularly with Donald Trump.
To be completely honest, I feel like I hadn't even formulated an idea of what a Donald Trump presidency would look like because I still hadn't. Even on Election Day, I had not wrapped my head around that idea.
You never really thought it was a real possibility.
Sure. That said, I think
who did?
No, I honestly,
Keith Ellison.
I spent the time between the Election Day and the inauguration, not allowing myself to be emotionally available to deal with this.
Right.
It was just kind of like
the stages of grief or denial.
Yeah.
And it really hit me on inauguration day when I was watching this horror show. And now that we're in it, it's still like I still will watch the TV and just go, what in the hell is going on?
To answer your question, I think there are aspects that have no, you're fine. I think there are aspects that have been, worse than I expected, but there are also aspects where the team he's put together is just also incredibly incompetent at their jobs, it seems. And there's so much infighting and, backstabbing, and there's these, there's the Kushner faction and the Bannon faction and the Reince Priebus faction. And I think he has struggled to, follow through on his core campaign messages and also present a coherent vision of how he's actually doing things that are materially helping people's lives. Then again, I've somehow wound up in a private pro-Trump Facebook group, and they all think he's doing a great job. So, his hardcore of support, even though his overall approval rating is, I think, in the high 30s or low 40s.
42 was the last one.
Yeah. That hardcore of his support, he could start a nuclear war, and they would think he was great,
He could even shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue.
Exactly. I mean, he said that, and it was like a horrific gaffe that would have ruined any other politician, but it's true.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
Right.
It's absolutely true. All this going back and forth about these Russia tapes of the Golden Showers tapes, he survives that.
Yeah.
He would survive that. I can't think of many things he would not survive at this point.
The Apprentice tape, the Hollywood Access tape, I'm sorry.
Admitting to sexual assault on camera.
And bragging about
it. And moving on women like a bitch. Mm-hmm. He survived that. He didn't just survive that. He got elected after that.
But the one thing that I have to say is that, Hillary kept making a point of this, as did we, that he was totally unprepared and unfit and ill-equipped to be president of the United States. I think that comes across every day.
Oh,
And
sure.
It even worse than
What
we
president
feared.
has ever watched 3 hours of cable news to start their day? I mean, I highly doubt Obama did that. He certainly didn't live tweet Fox and Friends. It just tells you something about
Even during the day,
competency
they
of
say
him.
that he runs into that little small office off the Oval Office to watch cable.
He's completely
cable
addicted to TV.
in the day, and then they say at night when he goes back upstairs and
Mhm.
they have no control.
Did you see that
that's
thing
all he does.
in that interview where he was talking about Spicer
Yeah,
and whether or not
yeah.
Spicer survives, and he's
Yeah.
He
goes-
totally plays into the narrative and
He said,
plays along with
I'm
it.
not going to fire Sean. He gets great ratings.
Mm-hmm.
The White House press briefing, he gets great ratings.
And as long as he gets great ratings,
That's why I think
He's
the
got a
only
job.
way to sort of meaningfully criticize this White House in a way that they'll actually care about is to embarrass him.
Yeah.
You can't, even if you point out his hypocrisies, how he's flip-flopped on essentially any important issue in politics, like that doesn't matter. That won't impact him. But if you say that he looked dumb on, a morning show,
Or
that
a-
will get under
That'll get
his
him.
skin, and by extension, he
Or-
will,
or SNL. But here's what's going to save the day. Emily's list reports there are more women than ever before, by far, 11,000 latest count, who want to stand up and run for office this time around. Emily Crockett is all over that, freelance journalist who joins me and Emma Roller and all of you in the next half hour here. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
Download our podcast, search for The Bill Press Show on iTunes, and remember to rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Bill Press Show.
So they say it's a man's world? Well, I don't see anybody's name on it. While they were out doing their thing, we slowly changed all that. We changed all that. Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Hey, look, it's those guys.
What's up? What's happening today?
Let's do those pearly whites, man.
Yeah. The boys, check it out. Stand up, do my terrorists, gon' compare us. Go.
Ooh, cute.
Are you good to try?
I'm fine.
Hey girl, what's up? What's the name? What's good? What's up?
How many did you have?
I should be fine.
You should be.
Sir, go and step out of the vehicle for me. Yes, sir. See ya, buddy. Today, Sean's got a hearing. We'll see how it goes. Good luck. So turns out, buzz driving and drunk driving, they're the same thing, and it costs around $10,000. So not worth it.
Same great show, new great channel. Stream live video at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Hey, how about a Tuesday, April 25, the Bill Press Show. Good to have you with us as we wind our way through the big stories of the day here. Coming to you live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Brought to you today by the American Federation of Teachers, a great men and women, Teachers of America, making a big difference in the classrooms every day under the leadership of President Randy Weingarten. We salute them, thank them for their support of the program, and we welcome to our conversation Emma Roller here for the entire hour as a friend of Bill, formerly New York Times, now with Fusion. And we're joined now by Emily Crockett. It's the Emily Show, if you please. Emily Crockett, formerly with Vox, now a freelance journalist. Welcome both.
I don't want to interrupt.
Breaking news?
Well, not breaking news necessarily, but I watch Donald Trump's tweets during the show, which might explain why I'm miserable all the time. He tweeted during the break,
oh, God.
Canada has made business for our dairy farmers in Wisconsin and other border states very difficult. We will not stand for this. Watch.
What's Canada
It is
doing?
happening, rather.
It's happening.
I don't know what Canada's doing. He's saying that he's. Do you know?
Well, this is when he went to Paul Ryan. He went to.
Oh, this is your neck of the woods, right?
Yeah. So I'm from Wisconsin.
She's had.
Wisconsin. But yeah, Trump went to Wisconsin. I think he was in southeastern Wisconsin in Paul Ryan's congressional district, and was talking about Canadian dairy farmers making life harder for Wisconsin dairy farmers, which, having lived in Wisconsin for 22 years, is a topic I have never heard about, to be honest. But I could just have not heard about it. Maybe Canadian dairy farmers are making life a living hell.
What we're going to do? We're going to build a wall. You know who's going to pay for it? Canada.
Well, remember when Scott Walker was asked about building a wall with Canada and he kind of kicked the can on it? This was during the campaign. This was eons ago. But build the wall in
Scott
Canada.
Walker was a candidate.
All right.
Aw, you guys.
Oh, good times.
Aw,
All right.
memories.
I want to move on, but let me just say, for anybody out there listening or watching who has any freaking idea how Canadian dairy farmers are screwing Wisconsin dairy farmers,
please let us know.
Please let us know.
At BP Show on Twitter. Hit it.
At BP Show. Let us know. All right. Whether you're from Canada or the U.S., we want to know. And we'll get to the bottom of it right now. Emily, I had a conversation with the political director of Emily's List a couple of days ago. Just saying, what's going on out there? What's the mood? And I was really surprised and thrilled to hear they've had a boom in women signing up to run for office. Just to put it in perspective, they said over 11,000 women since the Women's March. It started. Women's March, boom. People started calling.
Yep.
I want to run for office. What do I do? How do I get started? Boom, boom, boom. We're talking school board, city council, state legislature, Congress, the whole thing. That's 11,000. To put that in perspective, the past cycle, they had about just shy of 1,000 women running for office, which was the biggest number yet.
Yep.
And they called that the Hillary bump.
Well,
now compared to the Trump bump of
Trump bump was
11,000.
massive, yeah.
So what's going on out there?
Yeah, well, this wasn't just the Women's March. Of course, the Women's March itself was also inspired by Trump's election. It was immediately after Trump won. You started hearing reports from not just Emily's List, but other women's political recruitment organizations that they were seeing this massive hundreds of % spike in interest from women. And I think everyone just assumed that, we're going to have our first woman president, glass ceiling will be broken, we will have a nice milestone, and we'll all feel good about ourselves. And when that didn't happen, people felt, shocked for a number of reasons, but also thinking, well, history didn't happen the way I thought it would, and I guess I'll have to take history into my own hands because no one else is going to do it.
Now, is there a follow through now? Is it really?
Seems like it. Yeah. Because the once again, the Women's March was. The revolution is being led by women because women were particularly offended by just everything about Trump. And, of course, not all women because Trump won among white women, as we know. Yeah. Because, misogyny can be internalized, and that's how that works. But, there's a lot of energy, and there is follow through because what's interesting about the Women's March is that they really have done a pretty good job of building kind of a lasting infrastructure. Like it wasn't just a one-day thing. They got activists who would commit to doing ongoing actions. They have what they called 10 actions for the first 100 days of Trump's presidency. And one of those 10 was the big women's strike that we all heard about, where people wore red and were arguing about whether it's privileged for them to walk out of work or not and all of this. But that wasn't all. They've just kept, they've been working with the Action Network, a progressive sort of tool site. And they've been building a real membership. And a lot like it's not everyone not all the millions of women or millions of people who came out to march will be, permanent activists, but a lot of them will be, and that's a lot more than we had before.
And I know there have been training sessions planned. We had a friend a couple of weeks ago spending the weekend down from Massachusetts who was going home to join her daughter-in-law to go to a training session the next day just for women who want to run for office, but the basic ABCs of what you have to do to get started.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
Well, what I wanted to ask about is, I have talked to a lot of female state lawmakers over the years, and what comes up over and over again is that women need to be asked like 4 or 5 times to run for office before they will. There's just a huge confidence gap, like the same thing you see in other industries where, men feel like, oh, I want to run for office. I'm going to run for office. Women tend to kind of overthink it and say, oh, I don't think I check every box off the list, so I probably shouldn't.
Exactly,
no one will vote for me and need to be asked. So it's
What's also been a
amazing to see,
history, like police forces or fire departments, where you think of them and you see all these men, right? So women maybe didn't feel that they were even
sure.
welcome
And then
in
there's
that
also
club.
the boys' club aspect of politics.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of people think because gender bias actually has less of an impact on election results than you might assume. When women
What do you
run,
mean by that?
Well, it's when women actually run for office, they are just about as successful as men are. The problem is that they just don't run in the first place.
It's a selection bias.
It's a selection bias. Yeah, so it's a pipeline problem. Like that's what all the women. This is why we have these women's recruitment organizations, is because it is literally an undersupply issue. Women just and it's like, again, like Emma said, it's like this in the workplace too. Women are less likely to apply for a job if it's like they see a list of 10 qualifications. Oh, I only have 8, so they're clearly not looking for me. But when we become aware of these things and we can overcome them, like I myself have been, okay, don't do the typical lady thing. Let me, apply for these jobs that might seem like a reach. And if we become aware of these things and we can try to overcome them, and I think a lot of women are becoming more aware of the structural barriers that are part of the reason that we only just had our first real shot at a woman president.
Right. Well, it's too bad that more women, or let me be positive. It's great that more women are running for office because, in my judgment, they do a much better job once they get there than men
sometimes,
who have screwed it up. Not all of them, but men for the most part who have screwed it up. So why, Emma, you cover this campaign so closely. I the number that I've seen, 57%, of white women voted for Donald Trump. How? Why? I mean, how do you explain that?
Well, I think what Emily hit at, the internalized misogyny, is certainly part of it. I don't think it's all of it necessarily. As much media coverage as the Trump campaign gets in terms of reaching working class voters, where it really succeeded was reaching wealthy suburbanites and wealthy white suburbanites. And half of that population is women. Mm-hmm. So I think it's honestly, when we question why white women voted for Trump, despite all of the terrible things he said about women and all of the allegations against him, I think it comes down to sort of a class tribalism where white women are putting their class position above their gender, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I might add something to that, which is that it's not so much, the internalized misogyny thing. It's not like, oh, he hates women, so I think that's great. It's more about like why they can justify to themselves voting for him, right? Like it's the class. It's like, A, he is my identity, and B, okay, now as a woman I have to justify to myself why I can vote for him. Mm-hmm. And that's where this kind of unconscious sexism bias comes in, which is that the idea is that, well, he's a boorish jerk, but he's our jerk, right? And it's gender issues. It's not just women. It's also masculinity. It's ideas of, oh, well, Trump is this manly man, and so he's. Yeah, well, sure, he abuses women, but, that's what tough guys do, and boys will be boys. Or
I saw a lot of quotes from female Trump supporters where it was like, oh, my husband has said stuff like this, and he's, he's my husband.
Exactly. And a lot of them say, no, I find what he said deplorable, but no one's perfect.
Mm-hmm. You said something that when women do present as candidates, that there's less gender bias in the election than you would think. Okay. Yeah. So what happened to Hillary?
So, big caveat to that. There used to be more gender bias in outcomes so most of the political science research we have on this is from congressional races. And the part of the issue with that is that people have just gotten more used to women running for Congress. People are not used to women running for president, so there probably was a gender bias element there. And I wrote last year for Vox about some political science that suggested that, that Hillary was facing a pretty steep gender hurdle from men in particular, this was during the primaries. They compared it to Sanders, and it wasn't the same. Like when they primed men, when they just got men to think about, does your spouse make more than you? And so they think about, women and place in the family and society, and then they were much less favorably inclined toward Hillary after that.
But Emma, I thought that her gender would be a plus for Hillary.
Certainly for many...
Certainly among women and among a lot of men. Just this idea of Barack Obama, first African-American president.
Sure.
Hillary. Now, that's not maybe enough of a reason for that reason alone to vote for her, but that would give her a boost.
Well, that was certainly true for many voters, and she did win the popular vote. Big caveat. Yes. But I think what we saw with the Clinton campaign is that you can't just have a message of, I would be the first female president, and I'm not Trump, and look how terrible this man is, and all of their ads with children watching clips of him. That clearly did not break through to the wealthy white suburban moms that they thought they were going to pull over from the Republican side. And I think that is one of the Clinton campaign's fatal mistakes, is that they were trying to tack right and play it like a normal presidential campaign, when clearly that's not what this was.
I still come back to this comment from Chuck Schumer. This was at the DNC.
Yes.
Quote, "For every blue-collar Democrat we lose in Western Pennsylvania, we will pick up 2 moderate Republicans in the suburbs in Philadelphia, and you can repeat that in Ohio and Illinois and Wisconsin." End quote. Mm-hmm. So,
one of the most damning quotes of the whole election.
Brutal. Yeah. In retrospect, ugh.
So, on that point, I just want a little plug for our friends John Allen and Amy Parnes, who were in yesterday with their new book, Shattered, if you want the whole to relive the whole painful experience of the Clinton campaign. Check it out. So, right now, I cannot believe that the Democratic Party, which lost badly, but which now is, people are saying, we know we lost badly, but we got to rebound, we got to rebuild, we have to re-energize the party. We got to reach out and get back to our roots and show that we're fighting for working class Americans and all of that. Now the Democratic Party finds itself in an internal debate about abortion.
Yep.
What the hell is going on? It started in Omaha, Nebraska, right?
Yes, it did.
But it's blown beyond that, I think, because of Tom Perez mistakes. But at any rate.
Sure. So what happened is there's a fellow named Heath Mello, who is the Democratic candidate for mayor of Omaha, Nebraska. He stands a pretty promising shot of flipping the mayorship back to blue from red, where it is currently. And Nebraska is overall a red state, although Omaha is, city. Yeah. And the DNC was doing this big unity tour. And one of the stops on this unity tour ended up being Omaha, where they were promoting Heath Mello. Then comes in Elise Hogue from president of NARAL Pro-Choice America with just a scorching statement about Heath Mello's record on abortion. And a lot of people, and this was from a Wall Street Journal story where they talked about a vote or a bill that he sponsored, and there's it's a little bit complicated because the Wall Street Journal got it wrong. They said that he had sponsored a forced ultrasound bill when actually what happened is that Republicans had the votes to pass a forced ultrasound bill, but he had sort of pro-life cred to say, hey guys, why don't we replace this with this milder version where it's actually just mandatory.
You're given the option.
Yeah, you're given the option. Or sorry, not mandatory, optional. That's the word that I was looking for.
Right.
Not mandatory, but optional. Now that's
he's as a Catholic.
Yeah, he is a self-identified pro-life person, but that bill was not the only anti-abortion vote that he took. He also voted for a 20-week abortion ban, to restrict insurance for abortion and telemedicine. So anyway,
but I want to jump in for just a sec here,
sure,
because in the interest of time.
Sure.
And almost say like a so what as a pro-choice Democrat, and I want to cite Nancy. So here's Nancy Pelosi on Meet the Press, asked this question by Chuck Todd just a couple of days ago.
Can you be a Democrat and the support of the Democratic Party if you're pro-life?
Of course. I have served for many years, served in Congress with members who have not shared my very positive, my family would say, aggressive position on promoting a woman's right to choose.
But yesterday, Tom Perez came out, basically said, no, you cannot be if you're not pro-life, you cannot be a member of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Again, what the hell is going on? Emma, isn't this?
I think this just gets at so many of the core conflicts within the Democratic Party right now. And I honestly don't know where to fall on it. I mean, I think it's worth noting that, Bernie Sanders got a lot of flack for supporting Heath Mello, and Tom Perez was there too in Omaha. But Tim Kaine is a pro-life Democrat, and he was Hillary Clinton's running mate. Obviously, Hillary Clinton was running on a very pro-choice platform, but Bernie Sanders also is very pro-choice historically. And, I think if you take issue with Bernie Sanders supporting Heath Mello, then you also have to take issue with Tim Kaine being a pro-life Democrat. You
I don't remember NARAL making a big stink about Tim Kaine, did they?
Right. No, they didn't. And here's what I see the big distinction is, and I think there is actually a language problem here, because when we say pro-life, that means different things to different people. There are a surprising.
I hate the phrase, by the way.
Yeah, well, sure.
I'm
lot of
pro-choice,
people,
but I'm also pro-life.
Yes, a lot. Yeah, and they're
nuts.
but
Right.
setting aside
setting
that, right? So let's look in good faith at the people who self-identify as pro-life, right? There are a surprising number of those people who say, oh, well, I'm pro-life, but I can't decide that for someone else, right?
Yeah. Right.
But so there is a huge difference
Yes.
between being, personally pro-life and being part of the pro-life movement.
And I would put Heath Mello in that camp.
In the pro-life movement camp? Or in the personal?
Letting people decide for themselves.
Yeah, he used to, so, earlier when he was a state legislator from like 2009 to 2011, he was definitely making some pro-life movement votes. But now it seems that he's not anymore. He's a vocal supporter of Planned Parenthood. Local reproductive rights advocates say that he's an ally, and they're a little bit angry at the DNC for kind of meddling with their local politics, it turns out, as The Nation has reported recently.
Yeah, but to me, it's pretty clear. The Democratic Party is the pro-choice party.
Yeah.
And the Republican Party is the anti-choice party, if you will. And there are some Democrats, good Democrats, as Nancy Pelosi pointed out, Bob Casey is another one, who have a different point of view on that one issue. There are Republicans who have a different point of view on that one issue. And that's, to me, that's it. End of story. But instead, suddenly now, Democrats are fighting Democrats. And why would Tom Perez allow this to happen? I mean, this is not good for the party.
Allowing it to happen. I think it's again,
well, by his statement yesterday,
sure.
He differed with. He basically said Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, go down the list, Bernie Sanders, they're all wrong. They're not.
Did he say that in a statement?
No, but I mean, by saying you can't be a Democrat unless you're pro-choice, he's saying when they say the opposite,
but
that
look
they're
at the
wrong.
language again. It's you have to support a woman's right to have an abortion. That doesn't mean you like it, but you should not. You can't get in the way of it. Like, I think that the key difference here is belief versus action, right? So if you're a Democrat, you don't propose 20-week abortion bans, you don't vote for them, but you might identity. You might identify as pro-life because you're Catholic or whatever. And I think we need to talk about that distinction more.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
But my point is they shouldn't be talking about it in the first place.
Why not?
This is because this has been resolved for a long time.
No, it hasn't.
That the Democratic Party.
Well,
yes, it is. Yes, we have. The Democratic Party is the pro-choice party, and also accepts that there are some people who happen to be Democrats who don't agree with that.
There also just tends to be a lot more infighting among Democrats, and I think I saw a good tweet about this the other day. I forget who said it, but it's the same way that, architects can argue a lot over the design of a house, but arsonists don't have to argue over how the best way to burn down a house.
That's really good.
If your end goal, but seriously, if your end goal is to limit government, and you're on the same page in that way, the answer is just cut ruthlessly. Building a more expansive safety net welfare state that's where things get harder.
Right.
Republicans are arsonists.
Well,
yeah, kind of.
No, it's hard to follow that. But all I'll say is I think it's just the same thing. We don't need a great big internal debate among Democrats over gun control. I think we know kind of where people stand, and we respect a guy like Joe Manchin, who may not agree, or we don't need a big debate.
Do we respect a guy like Joe Manchin?
I don't, for a lot of reasons.
Well, he's got more than just that one issue.
Yeah, it's bigger than that one issue. I'm not a single issue hater.
I am not a Democrat who's going to say, unless you agree with me 100% on every issue, you're not in my camp. That's the way to become a minority party fast, I think. Anyhow.
But not on abortion.
No, but I accept somebody who disagrees with me as a Democrat.
Okay. So you agree with Tom Perez?
No. That's the point I'm making. No, I don't. Apparently wrong.
Disturbed our equanimity here.
Emily.
This
Thank you
is
both.
the Bill Press Show.